I think humans are pretty bad at estimating adaptation timelines. Let me tell you why. I think we expect ourselves to feel adjusted after a major transition in a few days, comfortable in a week, productive immediately, and back to normal almost instantly following even major change. But over the last couple weeks, as we came to Japan, I've kind of been realizing that most meaningful adaptation happens way slower than we expect. And I kind of think this can be applied to just about anything: fitness, nutrition, any kind of routine or habit you want to change, maybe even business or a relationship. We tend to massively overestimate what can happen in, say, a week, while underestimating what could happen in a year. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about the idea of giving ourselves more runway than we think we need. Because before coming to Japan, logically, of course, I knew this would be an adjustment. I've come here many times before, I've even lived here before, different language, different grocery stores set up. Training is different at the gym here. Your sleep schedule suffers with jet lag, of course, different social norms, and a completely different daily routine, honestly, when we're in Japan. Yet emotionally, there's also this tiny irrational part of my brain that kind of tells me, yeah, but you should have this figured out by now. And yet, when I really sit back and think about it, I'm only 2 weeks in. 2 weeks is nothing. So when I really thought about that the other day while I was creating a little reel of our first 2 weeks here, I kind of noticed myself subtly evaluating my experience like I was somehow behind schedule, like not fully settled in yet, still kind of tired some days, tired but wired, and maybe even overstimulated sometimes, and figuring out my new food routine and training schedule, documenting life versus really being present and living it. And then I kind of thought about what I would tell a client after 2 weeks. And I realized I would think that they were being absurdly tough on themselves. But we do this all the time. For example, let's talk fitness. This is what people do with fitness too. They start training consistently for, let's say, a week, maybe a couple of weeks, or even a month. And they're starting to get momentum, and maybe they just decide right around the time that it's probably about to start working, I guess this just isn't working. But meanwhile, biologically, psychologically, behaviorally, you're barely even adapted to the process yet. Your nervous system is still learning movements. In fact, for the first 6 to 8 weeks, most adaptation is neurological. Your schedule, you're still figuring out where to put training in your daily life. Your recovering patterns may be changing. Maybe you need more or less time to recover, maybe more or less energy, and you just probably don't feel fully competent yet. And yet you're expecting transformation immediately. I think social media has made this even worse because we consume everyone else's, you know, expert year 10 when we're on our baby giraffe week 1. So the point is that adaptation can be kind of uncomfortable. One thing I've been noticing in Japan is that adaptation doesn't usually feel inspiring while it's happening. Sometimes it just feels awkward, exhausting, inefficient, emotionally weird, overstimulating, and definitely very humbling. You don't really feel like you have it all figured out. You feel like somebody who can't find Greek yogurt at the grocery store. And that's okay. It probably should be that way at first, because growth rarely feels like this beautiful cinematic thing in real time. It usually feels pretty repetitive and pretty uncertain until one day you kind of wake up and realize, oh, this feels normal now. I think more people need to intentionally give themselves more runway. And I'm not talking about infinite excuses or avoidance. And this is not an excuse to not push yourself out of your comfort zone, but just a more realistic adaptation timeline. Because if your expectation for anything in life is always, I should have this figured out in a week, you're constantly going to feel behind. But if your expectation is something more like, Maybe this season of adjustment is going to last months. You create enough psychological space for actual growth to occur. And that's going to be true for, again, anything: moving somewhere new, building muscle, improving your relationship with food, starting a business, recovering from burnout, any kind of identity change or environmental change. The most meaningful changes really come from surviving enough repetitions to become familiar. And familiarity takes time. So lately, I've been trying to approach this experience this time around, coming to Japan, a little bit differently. Instead of this kind of relentless rushing of how quickly can I figure this all out and optimize life over here, it's looking a lot more like adding curiosity and letting myself naturally acclimate. Less pressure to immediately perform perfectly and instantly slip into new routines, and more curiosity to just show up, pay attention, exercise that curiosity to keep moving forward, and trust that adaptation is occurring even when it feels messy or uncomfortable. I remember the first week I got here, when I did my check-in with my bodybuilding coach, she told me, I think you're going to feel like a totally different person a week from now. And I did. So chances are 2 weeks from now, I'm also going to feel completely different. And a year from now, that version of me won't recognize this version. So if you're in a season where things feel maybe a little slow or awkward or uncertain or incomplete, I don't think that you probably need more motivation or to go harder. You might just need more runway. Because humans, again, consistently underestimate what can happen when we stick with something long enough. And I think sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to just stop expecting yourself to feel fully adapted before adaptation has actually had time to occur.